Oh my goodness. I've been speaking into a muted channel for the last 30 seconds. What a nice way to start off my Monday. Well, good morning, everybody. Rough start, but I've got Brian with me today. Brian, how you doing, bud?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Good. So I'm going to do my intro one more time because I just
Yeah.
realized that I was muted when I said it. So Brian, after 25 years of consulting experience, Brian is now helping solo advisors and coaches achieve the gold standard of 250K in revenue while working 20 hours a week. So, Brian, how did you arrive at this golden standard, this number that you've kind of pinpointed as being kind of what the target for a lot of people is, and where are you finding that most people sit in terms of their yearly revenue?
Yeah. So for the last 13 years, I've worked with a lot of solo advisors and coaches. And typically what I found is, most of them, their objective when they start their practice is really to create a 250K or more revenue stream while working and having flexibility. So they don't want to work full time. They want to work part time, or at least half time maybe, and have some flexibility to travel and live the life that they want. And what ends up happening is they, get on, they start getting, a fair decent number of clients, and they cap out. About 100 to 150K in revenue, and they're working 40 plus hours at this point. And because of that, because they kind of require time to make money, it's a trade-off. They can't just work harder to get on. So they need to work smarter and they need to figure out a way. And, I was noticing this is pretty common among my group of clients. I thought, well, okay, maybe it's just my guys. So I started doing some research and uncovered that it's like 75% of all solo advisors and coaches are in that space. Only about, and about, 20% don't get there. And then about 5% actually achieve it. And I had some of those 5% in my client group, and I kind of looked at, how they were doing things differently than the others who weren't. And so I said, okay, let's pull together all the best practices, all the blueprints, and we'll put it into a model. And we can customize this model for, each unique offering that a solo advisor or coach brings. But we can deliver that to, that 250K in revenue and working 20 hours a week. And we can only, like, even if they're starting at zero, we can get them there in 18 months. So it's just, and, it sounds like, oh, there's no way. But really all that is adding 2 new clients a week, or 2 new clients a month, which is highly doable in our model.
2 new clients a month paying you how much?
Well, it depends on we kind of split the offering into 2 ways. One of the underlying premises in the whole model is goes back to one of the longest standing beliefs in sales, which is sales is all sales is a series of yeses. And each yes you get is bigger than the last one. And the first, it starts very early on when you meet a person for the first time. You kind of offer your hand to shake hands with them, and they say yes, and they shake hands with you, and you introduce each other, and they have an initial conversation, and then it builds right from there. You ask them to share more information about their business, and they do, right? All those little yeses keep building up, and you need to do that, right? Because all those yeses are, if you can look at it as the yes ladder, which is one way, and you're trying, obviously you're asking for bigger yeses. Because if you walk into someone, you've never met before and go, you know what, I want you to write me a check for $1 million for my software, they're just going to say no. But if you get enough yeses ahead of that and slowly build them up to that, you get them to say yes to $1 million software deal. Part of that is, if you look at it from a different model perspective, is about building trust in a relationship combination. And it's how you position yourself that you can achieve this. They have to build enough trust that you're going to be able to deliver. They have to build up enough trust that you're the kind of person who can deliver all those kinds of things, and that they can trust you enough to pay you money, and that you're going to do their business well.
And Brian, just to kind of like embellish the actual problem statement, right? So it was kind of interesting to hear you say before we went on the call, you said that you've done a lot of research and you've identified this like glass ceiling, if you will, right? For a
Yeah.
lot of advisors and coaches, where they get to around that 100, 150K a year and then they start to plateau. So can you talk about that problem a bit more? Can you talk about why people face that glass ceiling? Is it just a time constraint thing? Is it deeper than that? Yeah. Can you just kind of like double
Sure.
click on
Yeah.
that?
So there's a couple of elements in there. One is I kind of call it the hustle lifestyle, is because that's really kind of where those guys end up. There's a few things that keep happening for them over and over again. One is a feast and famine life cycle in the sales prospecting, where they have no one in their sales funnel. They go find a whole bunch of people, pull them all into their sales funnel. They process them. They get clients out of it. They're onboarding and processing their clients. It gives them no time to then keep their foot on the gas as far as prospecting. They work on those clients. Some of those clients leave. Some of the projects end. And then at the end of the day, they have, they need a new flow of additional clients, and there's nothing in the funnel. So then they start all over again. So it's being able to keep your foot steady on the gas pedal all the time on prospecting and moving people through your funnel. That's one of those pieces. One is a little bit around delivery. So what ends up happening a lot of times is the clients start becoming, as a good advisor, as a good coach, you want to make your clients happy. And so they start doing what their clients want. Their clients start treating them more like employees than advisors and coaches. And they start showing up and, doing supplier meetings for them, or sales calls for them, or, getting involved. Like, I've seen it myself where, I've had clients go, look, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Will you sit in on a sales call with me? Right. And you go, okay, I'll do one. And then it becomes like, oh, why don't we joint sell everything all day? Well, if I'm going to be that, I might as well be your employee. As opposed to a coach. And even if they're paying you by the hour, it takes you away from having that synergies that you're recreating the same solution over and over again to sell, which is what you really need to do to be really successful as a solo practitioner. So you want to be able to be able to do that, right? Is have a synergistic, have some people say an off the shelf product. You want to have something synergistic that you can sell, that you stay in your lane. You're doing the same thing. It doesn't mean you're not doing customized solutions for each client. It can be, every conversation you have with a client can be different, but you want to be able having that, the same framework and the same kind of call with each client, so that you're not reinventing the wheel every day of your life. A lot of times that's a big piece of it. Sometimes it's around, going after the wrong size market. Going after, within their ideal client space, they could be, most people's target audience is too wide and too broad, because people don't want to miss anyone who could be a good fit. So they go too wide, too broad, and they bring in people who are less a good fit than others. Every group of clients you have, you can grade them as who's a AAA, a AA, a single A client. And what ends up happening is people get pretty happy having A clients instead of AAA clients. And people always ask me, what's a AAA client versus an A client versus AA client? So a AAA client for me is someone who, they're easy to, from a business perspective, to deal with, invoicing, payment, their objections, the time they demand of you, all those things are easy to handle. And from a client perspective, they're just a really good fit. You're delivering great results for them. It's a good fit. It's, big bang for their buck. They're really happy. You're really happy. That's like, your AAA ideal. And you know what? I don't know that anyone's ever perfect and ideal. A lot of people, when I ask them to rate their clients as AAA to A, they do it by how much money they make from each one. That's not how it works. If anything, it may be your profit margin per client. If you've actually calculated your profit margin per client and how much time you spend with each client and on everything else, if you've done that, then maybe. But a lot of times I'm going to say no. Most people just go, well, they write me the biggest checks. They're my best client, which is definitely not the case. I've had been with organizations where their biggest client is the one they actually lose money on. They're actually, every time they service that client, they actually are putting money out of their pocket and giving it to their client. So yeah, it is not necessarily the biggest is not the best. So it's always about getting the right client piece. And then, always, it's a lot of times, because we're in a business, and especially if you're solo by yourself, they start acting like a doer as opposed to an owner. Even if you're the only person in the business, you still have to act like an owner, which means some things you need to delegate out of your place. You shouldn't probably be doing your own bookkeeping and accounting. You shouldn't be doing your own legal work. You shouldn't be doing probably your own prospecting. You should be getting support on sales prospecting. You should be getting support on, depending on your business, other elements. Some of the best malls I've seen, they've outsourced entire operations. They managed it, but the operation is done through a third party even. So you have to know what you need to do and what you don't need to do, but you shouldn't be doing it all yourself.
Yeah. So Brian, you spent nearly a decade at Ernst & Young's performance improvement group before running business yourself. What did those 10 years teach you about how organizations actually improve versus how consultants say they improve?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I worked with a lot of big corporate clients, and so there's a fair degree of what you're doing is I'll say maybe inquiry as opposed to actually, having to fix things. In large corporations, they often will go, hey, we think there's something wrong there, or we want to explore something, and you're just doing kind of an example of what could be, which may never ever happen in reality. In small businesses, one of the key things that the golden rule of small businesses is efficiency. And this is one of my whole pieces is I think it shouldn't be efficiency, it should be effectiveness. So, and what's the big difference between efficiency and effectiveness is efficiency is like reducing costs on all matters, no matter what. And being effective is about making sure you get the biggest bang for your buck. So for example, I dealt with one client where their sales team, was while they were driving from one sales call to another, they were doing all their callbacks to potential customers, if they had any questions or complaints, or they were trying to close deals. So the sales manager, the owner of the company, was having them do their callbacks while they were driving to their sites. So these guys, very efficient, right? Great use of time, not effective at all, because those are really important calls to have your brain really sharp and be 100% focused on. Because when you call a prospect or a client back, you don't know what they're going to ask of you. So you need to be really sharp. And if you're driving in traffic, you can't be really sharp. You can't, all of a sudden pull up your laptop and look up some information. You can't be sharp while you're driving. So, either you're not driving well, which is putting your health at risk, or you're not doing the best job you could with this prospect. And hence you may be losing deals. So it is not effective at all. It's very efficient, but not effective. And it's really, really important in sales to be effective. If you're going to do a big, important sales call, you need to prep for it. You need to take, and not just information wise of what you're going to cover on the call, but get in the right mindset, relax, clear your mind, get rid of that last call that was in your head. Get rid of, the fact your dishwasher just broke, whatever it is. You need to be fresh and clear and be ready for that call and be at your top game. You need to be efficient, not effective. Or sorry, effective, not efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy though, no? Like how sales is such you could argue maybe the most important part of a business, right? Like you could engineer the most crazy, amazing product and raise all this money, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a sale, you don't have a business, right? Yet it's not taught in schools. It's not taught. I don't know.
There's no university degree.
There's no official academy. You could argue there's no even online. If I can't think of go to this one resource and that's where you're going to learn sales, because sales is, I don't know. It's like UFC kind of like you got to learn it like on the ground type of thing. Yeah.
And it's true. And with sales is there's, often people think that, when they're hiring salespeople, they're like, oh, I got to have someone who has the gift of gab and can present really well and doesn't mind talking and stuff. Those people, yes, that's probably a nice piece to have. The, statistical show the best salespeople are actually, people who listen really well. And that is not necessarily the people who talk really well. Those two tend not to be the same people. So they listen really well, they understand really well, they ask questions for clarification, right? So those are people who are more analytical than, the outspoken, outgoing extrovert that we often think about, the used car salesman. I'll use a typical sales kind of person. Yeah, that's not necessarily a good salesperson. A good salesperson is someone who listens, who doesn't push, listens, understands, seeks understanding, tries to solve the problem. So it is usually, if you depending on what kind of personality profiling piece you in, it's that person who's, bottom line, quick decision maker, thinks quickly, but is probably more introvert than extrovert.
So you spent or you saved a client over $1 million on a single payroll process improvement. Can you walk me through that project and what was actually broken?
Yeah, so that was on the process side. It was a lot of, and it's one of those things where you learn from all of those projects you've done in the past. But it was very much a data oriented issue. So the data going into the system was flawed, and it wasn't a rounding issue, but the information never always balanced because it was multiple systems were feeding the data into the organization, and it wouldn't reconcile. So because of that, the numbers would go up, and we were able to, be able to fine tune the system so that it was more accurate, and we'd be able to, reduce some of the data errors in the system that cleaned it up. And that's a very key component, I think, when you go back into sales, is a lot of people manage their sales by gut feel. So they feel that a certain tactic is working. So they continue it. I just closed a guy, and out of 100 phone calls, I closed one guy, and I closed him because of reason A, and therefore they believe that for the next, every other person out there is going to close because of that reason. And that's not always true, right? Sometimes you have to go with your research that says, here are the top 3 or 4 reasons why someone's going to hire you. This is the solutions you're going to solve, and you got to look for them all. You can't just, after time and after you have enough data, you can then go back and say, okay, look, we get everyone, our top solution is A or B. Our top target audience is B or C. But you can't do that off the get-go. You need to make sure you get the data. When I work with a lot of clients, the first thing we find out is that, the data going, or the candidates going into the top of their sales funnel aren't equal quality. They often will put anyone in, or they'll put, I need to get, someone, their plan says I got to add 10 people to my sales funnel every week. So they just find the first 10 names they put in, and then they try to move people through the funnel. That's not the right route. You need to be very critical, have a very clear idea of what a qualified candidate is. If they don't meet that, they don't get into the funnel. So your data going through the sales funnel should be very consistent about how many people you lose at each stage in the process, and you have to follow your sales process very clearly. One of the big issues I see with a lot of people is they have the very first conversation with someone. The person goes, "Oh, I want to write you a check," and they go, "Great, write me a check," and they're not qualifying that candidate at all. And 98% of the time, that person will be a very short run. You might get that one check from them, but they're not going to be a lifelong client. You're not going to get recurring revenue from them. They're not going to be a happy client. In some ways, they may end up costing you money because they may want their money back, or they may want a million things. And it's never a good scenario. You need to make sure that all your potential clients qualify on your side, not just that they're qualifying you, but you're qualifying them. It's got to be a two-way fit.
That makes sense. Hey, so Brian, you built sales to be around relationship first, high touch prospecting on LinkedIn. I guess, like, what's the moment that convinced you that essentially that beats, a shotgun AI volume approach?
Um, yeah, I guess there's always been two different camps when it comes to sales all the time, right? And there's the people who do volume and just like, and I've worked with salespeople who do this, who just, they blast as much, they use a shotgun, they get as many people, and their conversion rate is, 0.1%. And then I've worked on the other end of the scale where, sharpshooters, snipers, and they go after very few people, very select people, and they go after them one at a time. They run them through their process and get it. I kind of settled somewhere in between where, when I looked at the snipers, I went, okay, like you're going after one person at a time going through this, but there's, you went after the CEO of this company, but there's 9 other companies that are identical to his company. And he goes, oh, those are my number 2 to 9. Well, why don't we go after all 10 of those? What's your number 2? And then we go after that. And let's go after everyone who's just like him. So as opposed to being very focused on, and I was taught this sniper model myself, is like, who is that ultimate person? Go after that one person. Well, let's just go after everyone who's just like him. And the idea really came to me when I was doing a sniper approach once for a client. And on LinkedIn, it came up, here are people just like this person. And there were 10 names. And I looked at all 10 of those people, and they all had exactly the same job for the same size company in the same industry as the person I was trying to reach out to. I went, why don't I reach out to all 10 of them at once? It doesn't take any more, like what's that? Another 10% of my time to reach out to 10 people versus one. So why not do kind of very, very focused, not necessarily sniper where you're looking one off, but I'm looking at, I want to get after 10 or 100 or 1,000 people who are all identical. So being a little more focused, or a lot more focused than a shotgun, but not necessarily as finite as a sniper who's doing one at a time.
Would you say the biggest, I don't know, kind of, what's the biggest thing that people get wrong, especially like founders and CEOs of like earlier, they've had maybe a hit in the past, or maybe, they came up with some really fun, crazy idea. They raised some capital or something, but they still haven't quite figured out sales. Like, is there some pattern that you see out there?
So there's kind of two things. One, I think, is the doer of sales. A lot of owners think they need to be the only person. They're the only person who understands what's going on in the business and can sell. And that, one thing that's kind of always interesting to realize is there's 2 sides to sales, always, whether there's one person doing it or 2. There's a technical side of the sales. What are the specs? What are the conditions? What are all the features going on? There's a technical side to the sales that's key. And you need to clear that hurdle. I've been in cases where the technical side of of sales is being done by 2 other people behind the scenes, because it's, 2 engineers who need, on their side and our side, who need to agree that this will work. But the other part of the sales, which is really just as critical, maybe more critical, is the relationship side. You need to run your sales process. You got to make sure you go through each step so that person's getting qualified. And when you're qualifying someone, you want to make sure that they are going to be a good fit for your organization. So there has to be a win for them. A lot of people play the win-lose game in life. And so they figure, if I win a sale, the customer is losing, right? They're going to pay me money. They're worried about, making sure the client pays them as much as they possibly can, maybe too much. They're very, very focused on win-lose, and sales, to be very good, to be the best sales can be, and to get the most money lifetime out of a agreement, is a win-win scenario. So there has to be a win for the client, and 90, that's where sales is all about, is finding that win-win for both organizations, and doing it. So there has to be a win on their side. There has to be a win on your side. And to leverage and cement that win and move forward. It's not about it. The other pieces around the in small business is so keen on this, right? The critical way small businesses are successful is they are efficient, but they really need to be effective in the sales side. Sales has to be effective, not efficient. If you're efficient, you will most likely leave a lot of money on the table if you get any at all. So it's about being effective, not efficient. It's about making sure you manage those relationships. Those are key. Owners of businesses tend to be on one of two sides. So either they're very much the relationship side or they're very much the technical side, depending on the owner. You need to have both sides of that happening. And I've seen it successfully where the salesperson, the owner will be the technical person, the owner will be the relationship person, but they have to give up the other side. It's very difficult to run both sides. You can run both sides of the equation for sure. But the sales, the owner of the business needs to realize that and get support in sales. It's a lot of work to do both sides of that equation.
How is sales changing for the better in this AI era? Like, there's obviously this like negative side, which I was reading about through your work, as in people are just spamming more people, and it's kind of like blowing out of control. So maybe we could talk about that as well. But just curious, like, is there a positive side to this, or is it all just downside?
For sure. I mean, I think AI is a very powerful tool, but one is with AI, you really have to know how to use it right. The other part in sales that has always been true, and I don't think will ever change, is that the customer wants to be treated in a certain way. You have to. I always call it like you got to respect your prospect, right? If you're going through the sales process at any point in time, you show your prospect disrespect, you don't return their calls. You're too long returning their calls. You don't necessarily tell them the truth. You mislead them, misguide them, or which is sometimes salespeople will do that because they're afraid of telling them the truth that our offering isn't as good as our clients in this for this specific. So they don't want to tell them that. So they back away and they'll lie or mislead the client. Those are disrespectful things you do to your clients. You don't want to do that. You always want to respect your client. And I don't know many people who really like talking to AI. Most people would much prefer people showed them the respect of sending a message personally. So that being said, people understand AI is part of the world and automation is part of our world, but people really want to be reached out to and communicated with a person, and they don't want to have a relationship with AI. So where people are moving to AI agents, they have to be really careful too, because with when you're doing a lot of sales messaging and you're taking person through a prospect through an education process to get them to purchase your services or product. Sometimes there's misleading pieces. You don't mean them to be misleading, but they constantly get misunderstood because there's a dual meaning to that word in certain areas or cultures or geographies, or it's just not clear enough. It's not transparent enough. You can't always tell that. It seems really transparent and clear when you're saying it, but once you start to receive the feedback, you realize people are always asking about that. So it needs to be clear what exactly that is. And that's a process that goes on all the time with sales and with your sales messaging and your sales playbook. AI can't detect that. From my understanding, AI just kind of answers the questions it's given. It doesn't see the problems that are human, right? So what can happen? And sometimes you can lead people down the wrong path really quickly. And with AI, when it does it 10 times faster than a human, you're going in the wrong directions 10 times faster, which means you're leaving the direction you want to go, and you're going the wrong direction 10 times faster, which means you have to circle back and go the other direction, which is going to take you a lot longer to get there. So you have to be very careful with AI if you're going to use it. I would never turn on an AI bot and just let it go. It needs to be extremely close. I mean, any place I've ever used automation too, you're checking it the very first few records going through, you're making sure they happen properly. And then you're monitoring very closely for the next few hours. Then you're monitoring very closely for the next day, the next 2 days, 3 days, because there are errors that come up and you want to catch them all, because any one of the thing with sales is you can't have any errors in your sales process. It's not like other things where, 10% of our marketing campaign didn't hit the right client base. Well, that's fine in marketing, but it's not fine in sales. Sales is way too narrowly focused on prospects and converting them. The best sales processes, they improve their conversion rates through the sales funnel by 1% a year here and there, and that's huge. That's growth. That's massive, massive growth if you can do that. So if you're using an AI bot that's going to have a 10% error rate in your sales function, you're in deep trouble. Where AI is really good is you can use it to do research, to consolidate research, to find information about clients, which is always really good because you can go out there and have the AI look at the web to find out about someone. It gives you a lot of points that you can then use to verify with the person. So you don't have to necessarily say, oh, I see this, this, and this. Well, you don't take them for fact. You can verify those pieces of information with them. And if AI got it wrong, you don't look so bad, right? It's not so silly. And you can then use those to move your case ahead.
So Brian, you built this blueprint for coaches and advisors, right? To hit this like 250K practice on 20 hours a week using kind of like self-funded, almost like a done-for-you member recruitment. What's the actual mechanism that makes that math work?
There's a few. One is, one of the other best practices in the sales world is getting, no matter what you're selling, is to break it down into having an intro product or an intro service that's very, very small, very easy to buy, that people can, they don't have to go and look in their budget to see if they can afford it. They can say yes on the spot. If you can get that first yes, where they're writing you a check.
What's the ideal price point here? We're talking $5, $20, $100?
Well, it kind of depends on your target audience. Like
Okay.
Some people, I've dealt with the big banks in Canada, so that might be $10,000 for those guys.
Got it.
But if you're talking about a small business, it's a few $100.
Got it. Okay.
Right? Like
an assessment, or I don't know, like a report.
Yeah, an assessment, right? Yeah. Or you know what? I'll do a deep dive, and create a 90-day report for you, right? Based on assessments you've done. I'll create a 9-day report. It's going to take me a couple of hours. I'll go over it with you, and it'll take us about an hour to go over it, so I can explain it all to you. I want to get paid for my time, so I'm going to charge you, $300 or $400 for that. It's an expensive meal out, but it's not a break the bank kind of scenario for most businesses to spend $300 to get a detailed report and explain to them on how they can improve their business. And the ROI on that's got to be massive, right? If you can find them one thing they can improve tomorrow, it's going to save them 1% in revenue or 2% in cost. That's going to cover $300 in like a day.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing. And then, now they've bought, you've had a chance to prove yourself. Now you can step up and say, okay, now I want you to buy a month package or a week package or a 3-month package for $2,000 or $3,000. And now they've spent $300 and got a return. So yeah, could I spend, $1,000 and get a return? Sure. And then, you want to build them up. And so doing that, yes, there's going to be people who will stop at the small package, right? They won't proceed past it. But a lot of people will. And it's a great stepping stone. And what I found is you never lose people. It just becomes part of your sales process, and people will always go through your sales process, even if they're a little angsty and want to move quick. It's always probably a good idea to slow them down a little bit and take them through your process and do it right. It's not likely you're going to do that little $300 project and they're going to go, I'm sick and tired of talking to you. I'm going to go, well, then you would have been sick and tired of me at the $1,000 or the $5,000 level too. So, yeah.
Cool, man. Well, Brian, I didn't realize. I mean, I have a whole bunch of questions lined up, but we're kind of like already almost near the end of our time here. But I'd be happy to bring you back on, Brian. I feel like this is one of those, it's like one of those uncomfortable topics, like I don't know, like money or or God or something. Yeah, but it's but I feel like
politics.
yeah, at least it needs to be talked about more. And yeah, and I really appreciate you kind of spending your time with me. But maybe just help me understand, before I let you go, what does BRIC Consulting look like in 5 years? The same 3 offerings, or is there a fourth one coming? Or
there'll probably be more offerings because it'll probably roll out into maybe some other industries as well. Yeah, it's one of the pieces, I guess, by design. I want to stay boutique, as you say. I don't want to. My goal is not to become a corporation, a massive corporation or anything. I want to stay small. I want to stay kind of in the same business model I have now. So it'll be, adapting to it. I'm sure there's going to be, I mean, right now we're really dealing we're getting a lot of interest from people who are really tired of AI. They've used AI and sputtered out with zero success. And now they want to, kind of really bite into the human side of things, which is really good. I think we'll see more as this settles. I mean, we've seen this happen before, right? When cell phones came out, when the internet came out, when email automation came out, all of the same things that are being said about AI in the sales world were said then, right? Salespeople with AI, email automation, there'll be no salespeople in 3 years. It'll all just be automated emails going back and forth. We won't need people. We have a chain of emails. We don't need. What do we need a salesperson for? That was all the belief, and little do we know that. I mean, that just disappeared really quickly. There was probably maybe a year or year and a half where cold emailing and email campaigns were highly effective and useful, and then they've slowly since those days they've become less and less and less effective. People built spams and filters, and I'm seeing that with AI right now too. There's a lot of people you send them a message, their initial pushback is on AI, like, oh, I don't want to talk to you if you're AI, or if this is AI, you better do this, right? Like all the time I see like multiples of those every day, from people. They want to make sure they're talking to a person.
yeah, I'm very bullish on AI, yet I still don't see how people will just, at least for high ticket purchase items, I don't see how they're going to just all of a sudden trust some like robot or some, AI system. Like, I think they're going to need that human touch. But I could be wrong. Who knows? Cool. Yeah. Well, Brian, where do people learn more about you? I guess, what's your website?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. Brian Crew at LinkedIn or LinkedIn /IN /Brian Crew, or company LinkedIn /company /BRIC Consulting. Best way to find me. That's the most current information about what's going on with me. Everything current is there, and things always evolve. So that's the best place to find me.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to land the plane here. I see we have quite a few people listening. Thank you all for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. And Brian, like I said, the invite's open maybe in the next couple of weeks. If you have a bit of time, we'd love to have you back on and kind of just land the plane properly. I did have quite a few questions, but I just love, how simple you put it. And and I do. And, I obviously work in the sales AI space as well. And I'm a big believer in it, but I do think there's a point where, it breaks, and you're going to need humans in the loop. Obviously, you need that human touch, and big believer of that. Cool. Thank you very much, Brian. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Sonny. Talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Just hang out for 1 minute, Brian. I'm going to bring this stream to an end.